And a lot of times everybody wants that big growth, but the biggest mistake agency owners make is they're selling it the wrong way. They're selling it the traditional way. And a lot of times they're losing money and they're losing profit of how you're actually selling it right now.
Welcome, everybody, to another A2 Hosting Show webinar. Got a great guest today. I did an interview with him, conversation a couple weeks ago. That's on our YouTube channel. You can find, but I've got Jason Swang from Agency Mastery 360. I've known about Jason for a long time. Got to reach out to him. A mutual friend introduced us, got to talk, and then we got to record and hear his journey, and it's pretty inspiring. Jason's been doing agency work for a long time. A long time. I'm talking like 90s era. When you're 90s era, Jason,
Why
that's
you
going way back.
call me old? Come on.
Yeah. Well, not old, experienced, but
Is
ran a great agency. We'll probably share some of that too, I would say. But now runs Agency Mastery 360, an amazing agency coach. Just told me before we got started that he just got off one of his masterminds, which I've found masterminds to be incredibly helpful, and have an expert like Jason here and leading those groups, I think, is so good for our industry, our ecosystem. But Jason, you're going to be talking about how to close big clients with the right offer today, and I'm excited to sit here and listen in. If you all have questions, put those in the Q&A in the Zoom. Jason's going to have ample time today, told me, for Q&A. So now's your time. You got the mic. Like, post a question for Jason, an issue, a challenge you're having, a goal you're trying to hit. This is the person to ask. So Jason, thanks again for being on the webinar today and sharing this about how they can increase their agency revenue.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Hey, everybody. I want to go through my slides really quick because I love doing Q&A, but what I want to go over is some little things you can do that can make a really big difference in your agency. And obviously, everyone wants bigger clients, but you have to get the right offer, right? And a lot of times everybody wants that big growth, but the biggest mistake agency owners make is they're selling it the wrong way. They're selling it the traditional way. And a lot of times they're losing money and they're losing profit of how you're actually selling it right now. Now, I just want to go. I always hate when people spend too much time on who they are because it really doesn't matter. Like, my focus is on you, but I do have an amazing wife, two kids who are a lot older. Right now, there's 14 and 18. So that just gives a kind of an idea of how old I am. But I did start an agency by accident, like a lot of you guys. In 1999, I created Solar Velocity, grew to an 8-figure agency, and exited that 12 years later, working with some of the biggest brands in the world. For the past 10 years, I've been running the podcast, The Smart Agency Masterclass, where we've interviewed 750 amazing agency leaders all over the world. And, a lot of times I'll speak at an event, but our whole goal is to create a resource I wish I had when I was running my first agency. Now, one of the big things that screwed me up when I started my agency in the very beginning was I didn't have that clarity that I needed, right? Going back to my, origin story, I created a website called In Shit, making fun of one of my friends that looked like Justin Timberlake from NSYNC. It got popular and people started asking me to design websites, $500 websites, $800 websites, $1,000 websites, right? In the very beginning. And I was just reacting to the market. And I really didn't get that clarity until many years later of going, where do I want to actually go? Who do I want to actually service? And one of the things I want you guys to think about right now and write this down. If you were going to be paid on performance only, who would you do it for? And what would you do for them? And that's what you should be actually doing, right? Rather than trying to do everything and anything for everybody. And one of the big challenges a lot of us have is, how do you become your ideal client's trusted advisor to really position yourself to stand out in the crowd, right? To be that colored pencil out of all the black and whites, because there's a lot of Me Too agencies out there. And we don't want you to be a Me Too agency. We want you to stand out. And when you think about when we're going to, have a conversation with a prospect, We need to ask the right questions to become the choice rather than a choice. Because a lot of us, we don't want to be that slimy, like I just bought a new car. You don't want a slimy salesperson, right? Like, going back and forth. And we don't even want to, sell, right? Sales is like when people call me an agency guru or a coach, like I cringe, right? And a lot of agencies even cringe when you get called an agency because you're like, oh, it's a slimy network. And what we need to do in order to change that persona is ask the right questions and change that conversation. And when you were changing that conversation, we need to be kind of that nurse practitioner or that doctor that comes in and go, all right, where are you going? What's the biggest challenges that you have in place? What have you actually tried? And a lot of us will chat with a prospect. I mean, put in the comments, Corey, I can't see any comments, but you can tell me how many people have chatted with a prospect for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, even a year, only to find out that they're not the right prospect. I have a motto that I've developed over. I always said, "There's no such thing as a bad agency client. There's only a bad prospect or a bad process." And a lot of times, it's really on your process. And I want to give you a formula in order to find this out within the first 10 minutes of the conversation. So you're saving time, right? One of my goals, like I told you in the very beginning, is to be a resource I wish I had. And if someone could have told me what I'm about to tell you, I could have saved a ton of time in the very beginning or even in the middle, honestly, because I would waste a ton of time with the wrong prospects. And think about, I've come up with this thing called NBAT, and the N stands for the need. And these are kind of the questions I want you to ask right when you have the call. So the first question you're going to ask is, what are you needing? Like, why are we having a conversation today? If that doesn't align with what you can actually do, punt, go to the next part. The next part is the budget. Now, a lot of times, and Corey, you could attest to this, right? Like you're talking to a prospect and you go to them, what's your budget? And what do they normally tell you?
Him haul around. But yeah,
But like they'll say, I don't know, you tell me, right?
yeah.
And I want to give you all a way to get the prospect's budget 99% of the time. This is what I call my budget buster. Now, there's two ways to get the budget every single time or almost every single time. When someone says, I don't have a budget, now this has to fit your personality. But I always say, cool, I love working with people that don't have a budget. So we don't have to worry about money and we can try out all kinds of cool things. And they kind of get that same reaction that Corey just, put, or probably you guys are probably having a little chuckle and be like, huh. So then you go back and saying, oh, you do have a budget. And then you go into step number two, or this could be your step number one, and be like, look, I just need to make sure that we can actually help you out and you're right for us as well as we're right for you. I need to know some kind of range of what you're trying to stay around. Now, a lot of you may do this, but you do it in the wrong direction. Now, I'm dyslexic, so I always go in reverse and it actually works better for me because everyone always remembers the first number. Most people will say, hey, what's your budget range? $1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000. Well, what's the first number I said? 1,000. So that's what you're anchoring 1,000. I always start really big. What's your budget range? Are you trying to stay around a billion, a million, 100,000, 10,000? What is it? And I start really big because I want them to know I'm worth it. I'm not saying my prices were a billion. I'm just doing that as shock and awe, right? To be like, tell me a budget. And then most of the time they tell me the budget. The next part of NBAT is the authority. I want to make sure, and not just their title, I want to make sure that they have the authority to make the decision. Because if I'm not talking to the decision maker, you're wasting my time and you're going to be the worst salesperson for me. So a lot of times I ask the question, so you told me what you need. Tell me about your overall business objective and how this relates to it. And most of the time, if they're not a decision maker, it'll be like, you have to ask Bob. Who's Bob? He's the decision maker. He's the CEO. Cool. Can we get Bob on the call? It's a nice way rather than, hey, I don't want to waste time with you. Can I talk to Bob? So it's a nice way. The last part is timing. I did a video many years ago of like Darth Vader wanting a website and like he wanted it now, right? Like he's setting me up for failure. If I'm going to design the Death Star, for Darth Vader, then he's going to be choking me, right? With his like whatever deal he does. And so if they don't tell me the need or it doesn't match up, if they don't have the budget, I'm not talking to the authority and their timings, any one of these, I'm punting and I'm going to the, but if they do pass, then I need to be like, all right, cool. I'm the doctor. And right, doctors have authority, right? And so what do doctors come in when they first meet with you? They start asking questions. And so I developed this methodology around what I call the 3 I's. So these are the next questions you need to ask in order to position yourself as the choice rather than a choice. The first one is based on what you need, what's your biggest issue right now? Now, you might have to do a little bit of digging, right? They may, oh, I need a better website, and that's my problem. Well, what's the real issue? It could be around positioning, right? Maybe they have the wrong message. But once you figure out what's the biggest issue, then what I want you to do is ask them the next I. What's the biggest impact? So what's the impact that this issue is causing you? Or what's the impact that this is going to do if I solve this? Like if you have a lead generation problem, right? It's not a website problem. You have a lead generation problem. How much is this costing you a month? And have them come up with the number. If you tell them the number, they're not going to believe it. So now you've anchored that value or that challenge, right? You're kind of stabbing them with the knife a little bit in their side and twisting. The next thing you need to figure out is how important is it to them? So this actually will tell you if this is the biggest issue. So if they go, this is not a real big issue, be like, oh, really? Like, you just said $1 million lead generation problem. What is the biggest issue? And then you kind of reset and go back through the 3 I's because this will provide you a great follow-up strategy later on. So let's say you walk them through a proposal and they loved everything. They're like, I need some time. And then we could talk about objections and that kind of stuff. But I always hate when salespeople would call them, hey, I'm just following up or checking in. That's a begging strategy. If I don't hear from someone in a while, I'm going to check in by doing this. Hey, Corey, I haven't heard from you in a while, so I presume that you solved that $1 million lead generation problem. Oh, yeah, you haven't solved that yet? Is that still important to you? Cool, I'm glad I called you. Here, sign right here, right? And so it's a really nice way in order to, get to where you're wanting them to be. The next thing, I'll try to talk faster so we can get to some Q&A, but I'll stick around as long as you guys have questions, is changing your offer. And a lot of agencies are actually making the biggest mistake in selling the retainer first. And you're selling a retainer at like month to month because that's an easy decision for them because they have an out rather than selling a year-long retainer. And it's really kind of like asking, like, if you went out to your significant other, if you're married, if you ask them to marry you on the first date, you're not going to do that, especially if they did say yes, they're the damn wrong client. And that lady's going to be crazy, right? They said yes. So I wanted to kind of go over a really quick little case study of how one agency went from 25,000 a month in retainers to 87,000 a month in just 2 months. Now their approach, they were closing at 50%. And their sales cycles normally took 60 days, and their average retainer was like 5,000, which, and they were holding on to their clients for like, 6 months a lot of times, which is a whole nother issue. So, their yearly revenue was anywhere from 30 to 60,000. Now with the new approach, their closing rate went up for 85% plus. Their sales cycle went in less than 30 days. A lot of times it was down to like 2 weeks, and their average retainer went up to about 8,500. And they were guaranteed for the year for the revenue. So it was a little over 6 figures per client, right? That's a big freaking difference, right? Like you definitely got to use the fire icon, right? in to show that, right? So it's 44,000 plus each year per client. Now, they acted kind of like a doctor. And think about a doctor, they never sell, they prescribe. And this is how agencies really needed to transform, and they needed to educate rather than prescribe. So what we did for them and we told them to do is we needed to come up with a foot in the door offer where it points out an opportunity that they don't want to mess out on. And they can choose to do the SEO, or what they did is they want to do like an opportunity analysis for their SEO as their foot in the door. And so what he had to come up with was, something that was a low barrier to entry. It made it really easy for them to understand. It led to their core offer. It had high perceived value. And obviously, it should go without being said, the first transaction had to be positive. So, like for some examples of Baby Jason showing this right here, it could be like an audit, it could be a customer journey map, could be a discovery, could be a roadmap, or an a la carte service to do. Now, the biggest thing of what you don't want to do is don't go off and, kind of like do analysis and a report and then like show them results. And you don't want to just do like a plain report and you don't want it generic. What we need to do is we want to do it with them, right? And so what we did with this SEO analysis is we would say, look, we're going to go through what you're doing now, and then we're going to break down what your opportunity is. Or like, for example, if you wanted to do like mapping it out, like the lead generation strategy or a lead generation blueprint, I would go look at their website and I'd say, well, how are you capturing leads now? They're going to the contact page. What happens after that? Oh, we just email them one time. Oh, they're not added to a newsletter. You don't have any drip emails. Nope, we don't. And then we would actually build it with them, making them think they built it. Now they're going to believe in it. Now they're working with you. They trust you. They're going to bear everybody else to you, which is a huge advantage. And a lot of times too, is once I get to the end of the plan, then I say, well, what do you think about this plan? And they're going to be like, I love it. Like, cool. Well, what I recommend is let's do a project that actually solves this problem that the foot in the door highlighted. Right. And then I just ask them, on that project, what do you think of this? Is this a good plan? Do you want our help? Right. And then we would start off by offering them a 3-month project. So remember, going back to my original case study, the prospect would charge $5,000 a month. So I went to him, I said, how long does it take for your clients to see a return on investment, to have some wins? He was like, 2 months. I'm like, cool, well, let's extend it to 3 months. And then as they start seeing those results, then I'm starting to position that retainer. Okay. So I start off with some easy decision that someone can commit. And I even sell the foot in the door. I always say, look, there's 3 possible outcomes. You'll love the plan. You'll go execute it yourself. I'll wish you luck. Number 2, which is the most common, you'll love the plan. You want to work with us. We can talk about the details. Number 3, you don't like the plan. I give you your money back. So there's nothing for you to lose. This immediately qualifies them. And you could sell this foot in the door, and it doesn't matter what you charge. I have agency members that charge $500. I have agency members that charge $10,000. It just depends on the ranges of what you're going after, right? And then as you're working with, and here's the cool, interesting fact. If someone pays you money, they're 10 to 20 times more likely to give you more money if they had a positive transaction, right? And then what I like to do is not go from the foot in the door to the retainer. I like to go to their project. And that project is designed around solving the big challenge or opportunity that we pointed out in the foot in the door. And then we can position the retainer. And right. And so as we're going through, you going through, hey, Mr. Client, now we've got a lot of results for you. I have this idea of what we need to do, and I want to go through this plan. You go through this plan and be like, would you like us to do this for you? So my client did this, and he was able to now charge $8,500 a month retainer for 12 months because they've earned trust. That client's already paid him twice. and they've already seen results. So now you can get a lot more. So just in recap too, um, uh, you just got to think about what are the right questions to ask. But in order to really make all this work, we need to have clarity of who your ideal client is. Remember what I told you in the very beginning. If you're going to be paid only after you delivered amazing results, who would you do it for? What would you do for them? Then you have to figure out what are the right questions to ask that positions you as the choice rather than a choice. Develop a foot in the door, something irresistible offer that converts prospects to a client very fast. Then think about what's that small project, and that small project is going to change, right? Like you don't have to. Uh, I have a lot of agencies we work with. A foot in the door is easier for them to develop, but they're kind of constantly trying to squeeze them into a project that's the same every time. I'm like, no, your clients have different challenges. Adapt that project, and then you create that retainer. So I think I went through it quick enough so we can get to Q&A, but I do want to give you guys something. If you go to swank.com, I want to give you access to the foundational system. So over the past 10 years, I've found that there's 8 system framework for really scaling your agency. And the first 3 systems are the foundational systems that a lot of people miss. People constantly go to prospecting or sales, systems, but they don't have the clarity system. They don't have the positioning, don't have the offering system that I talk about this. And there's tons of resources in this. And I want to give this to you guys for free. If you go to swank.com, normally with Agency Playbook, I charge $1,600 for it. I want to give you the first 3 systems for free. So if you go to swank.com, you can get that. I will shut up. Let's go to Q&A. Did I go through it fast enough?
Hey, you did. Hey, everybody, as you're thinking about your questions, post those in the Zoom Q&A right here at the bottom of Zoom. And Jason's here. So you like me, you probably have some questions. So if you don't post those quickly, I'm going to start asking my own. But Oliver said, any recommendations for lead generation, running ads, organic, social media, and cold calls?
Yeah. So one of the things I always talk about is in the sales system or the prospecting system, you really want 3 channels. Okay. When your agency is just, and this happens in the very beginning and for a long time, especially when your agency, kind of levels off, you're building your business on referrals with it just isn't scalable. And the 3 systems that I always want people to do is an inbound system, an outbound system, and a strategic partnership channel. I'll talk about the outbound first. And this is not like an outbound agency, like cold calling. I've never seen any of those work in 25 years. Sorry. You need to do that in-house. And it all starts with making a list of your top prospect or your top ideal clients that you want to go after. So think about, make a list of your top 50 hit list of people that you could hit it out of the park. And then you do research on this. I've told this to a ton of people, and only probably a handful of people have ever done this. And it's worked every single time. So the best outbound strategy is this: make a list, research. And so let's say let's say I'm researching Corey's company, and I find out, and I'm a web design agency or a lead generation agency for websites. And I see on his page, he has red all over it. He has no call to action on the website. And I point out like maybe 7 different things that if he actually changed, it would make a big difference. And it's a really easy change that you could do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send him a video, not an AI generated or any of that. I'm just say, hey, Corey, I was checking out your website. I noticed you didn't have a call to action on the homepage or above the fold. And just give him some ideas. Hey, I hope this helps. Boom, send it. Next day, hey, Corey, I was checking out your website. I noticed you had red all over your website, which means danger and means, right, like stop. And I felt like if you want to have people, click more, change that to green or orange or any other color. Hope this helps. Day number 3, do it again. 4, 5, 6, do it 10 times. Not the same video, but do like helpful advice that they can go do. They can't ignore you. They can't. All right. So that's just one strategy for outbound. For inbound, all of you should have a podcast for your particular audience. And you create, and this could be an outbound strategy as well, right? Invite your perfect prospect on your podcast. You'll build a relationship with them, right? Like Corey and I are best friends now, right? Like we have a relationship now. And so that's another one. And then create micro content, post that out on LinkedIn and show that value. And then strategic partnerships. Think of like what I did at Solar. It was right when content management systems were really getting big. We had our own, but um, Microsoft was really starting to get a lot of traction around SharePoint. Sitefinity was another one. Um, and I just became strategic partners with them. And I've reached out to those technology companies that had my audience that I wanted. We got LegalZoom from them. We built LegalZoom because we were partners with Microsoft. We got Aflac from that. So when you have all these channels, you can get a lot of, it builds your pipeline very fast. Hope that helps.
Excellent. Sorry, I was trying to read through the questions
No
and
problem.
unmute at the same time. Can you share some of the questions again that you ask your clients, your prospective clients? I want to say this was the 3 guys. Lori asked that question. So, Lori, if you have a specific, was it the 3 eyes or the NBAT?
NBAT. So NBAT is around need, budget, authority, and timing. And then the 3 I's after they're qualified, then what's the biggest issue? What's the impact that the issue is having? And how important is it to you?
Excellent.
So need, budget, authority, timing, issue, impact, and importance.
That's excellent. All right. Someone asked, we have seen clients, even after paying partial payment, they stop responding. What do you do in that case? So, gave a partial payment, didn't respond. How do you deal with the client that ghosts you and doesn't pay?
Uh, I mean, you could always take them to court, but it's kind of not worth time. I just kind of move on. Now I will tell you guys a funny story. I had this one company. This should tell you kind of the type of people they are. They were sitting on a cruise ship one day and they were too lazy to turn around their lounge chair. So they created this double-sided lounge chair company because they were like, other people are as lazy as our dumbass. I thought it was a dumb idea, but we took them on as a client and we got them to pay 100% up, or no, we got them to pay 50% up front and then a quarter halfway through or at a certain date, whichever comes first, and the same thing at the end. They were always so slow in getting us anything that we were paid 100% within whatever their time frame, like couple months. Well, they never got us the information that we needed in order to do our job. And then 2 years later, I sold. 4 years later, they actually reached out and were like, "Hey, Jason, I'm ready to do it." Like, so clients are just
Oh my
goofy.
gosh.
Like, just get more better clients.
That's good. I'm curious, Jason. So if you all have questions, post those in the Q&A, but I have one for you. So when people come get to you, what are the 3 problems they typically have?
They're the agency owns them rather than you owning the agency, meaning you're too busy. Um, and really, when you look at it, if you say you're too busy, you're not charging enough. I have a t-shirt that says that. uh, and you're not charging enough. Like I always try to backwards into the root cause. Like if you're not charging enough, that means you don't have the pipeline in order to be picky. If you don't have the pipeline to be picky, you don't have that clarity. That's why I want to give you guys access those 3 systems of the playbook, right? So you get that clarity for who I need to go after. What do I need to actually offer them? Then you can go through those 3 systems that I told you about, right? For inbound, outbound, strategic partnerships. Because then when you get to that, you're like, oh, wow, I can charge 20K a month rather than 10K. And you do that for the new prospects. And then you can do that for the old prospects, right? Like I had a mastermind member, Dean, uh, he doubled his pricing on new prospects. And then he was like, damn, like that worked really well. But I have all these existing clients at half off. So he went to the old clients and we thought like half of them would say yes, half would go away, meaning you make the same amount, but you have less clients. Now you have more bandwidth. All of them said yes. He made an extra $74,000 in monthly reoccurring revenue by doing this. And he was sold 2 years later, right? Like, so pricing is a big thing. Um, Other ones, they don't know who to hire and to start releasing. Like I've bought 10 agencies in the past 3 years. And one of the things I look for when I'm buying an agency is the owner doing all the delivery, or are they part of the delivery system? And if they are, that's a big no for me. Same thing in marketing. Is the owner out of marketing? Is the owner in sales? Right? I want to know, like, I want you all to transform into a CEO rather than an owner. And in order to do that, you need 5 roles. You need to set the vision and communicate it to the team. Once you do this too, right? Remember going back to our North Star and how we make decisions. I want to be a resource I wish I had when I was running my agency. My team can call me on my shit if I make a decision that's not followed that North Star. They can also make decisions without coming to me because they know where the boat's going. And if they can get the boat there quicker, cool. Right. So communicating that to the team often. The next one, coach and mentor your leadership team. The other one, build strategic relationships, understand the KPIs, right? And be the face of the organization. Like those are the roles. So
Mm,
that's just some of the things.
that's good. Thank you. Sue asks, what do you suggest to get a prospect to see you as an expert in more than one area? Clients tend to typecast us. We have several areas of expertise, but people who work at larger businesses have difficulty getting the prospect to open up their minds to the fact that people can be multifaceted. We have an entrepreneurial mindset, want to be capable in many areas, but many prospects cannot grasp this. Think this is too good to be true.
Well, it's about having a defined niche that you're going after, right? And so the more you drill down into that, the more content and the more specific questions you can ask to that industry. You guys would not be on this webinar right now if I went after B2B. B2B is not a niche. Like I laugh when people say, I go after B2B. Really? You're going after every single business? You can't understand their biggest challenges or what they actually aspire to or how it actually makes them feel. Right? Like when I say, does the agency own you or do you own the agency? That probably like, fuck yeah, the agency owns me.
Mm.
Right? There's an emotion there. And then I can say, oh, you probably, the agency owns you because you're not charging enough and you're too busy. Right? I can relate to that. And the more you drill down, the more you're seen as that expert, or I don't even like expert. I hate guru. I don't like expert. Let's just say specialist or trusted advisor, right? Like you're trying to position yourself as Alfred and Alfred tells Batman what to do. If you're Batman, that makes the client Robin and no one wants to wear those ugly green tights. I've never seen anybody dress up as Robin on Halloween, right? I haven't seen anybody dress up as Alfred either. And so you can stand out. Remember that pencil. right?
Yeah.
If everybody's
So
dressed as Batman,
that's good. Being there for the client to help them get where they're trying to go. So I want to go back to one thing you said. When you bought 10 agencies. So what's interesting for perspective, I've had an exit myself, is that going through the due diligence process and then even thinking there's someone else out there is it really changes your mindset because you start looking at value. And I want to go back to something that's been just a moment on this, but not like maybe everybody today goes, I'm not going to sell my business, but I would still posit this is an incredible exercise to see how to make your business better. So there's a couple things you did when you look at it from a buyer's perspective that you said that was so interesting. Is the owner, you all listening today, doing all the work? That's a big question to ask. And if you are, that's one to work on. Because if you're doing all the work, you have created a job for yourself. And I
mhm.
love the things you put that a CEO does, transition from an owner to the CEO. But I want to take a moment there and go, okay, what are those things again that you look for? And those are the roadmap. Even if you don't want to sell,
Yep.
you want a business that manages itself, that can run without you having to do everything. That was one that really, really stuck out, especially you've been an agency owner, sold, and then you're now on the other side buying agencies back. There's a lot to learn from that, from a strategy perspective about how you run your business.
Yeah, I mean, I and a lot of times, honestly, and my partners in the agency they always get mad at me because a lot of times I'll check like, and we're not, and this is not some BS roll up strategy where we don't give you cash. It's like we're buying agencies over 1 million in EBITDA net profit, and we're saying, hey, your agency's worth 5 million. We're going to give you 2.5 million in cash and the other 2.5 in equity and other stuff. Um, so I just want to kind of preface that because there's a lot of people out there trying to take advantage of people. But I actually talk a lot of people out of selling I would love to buy. I'm like, you're making over $1 million a year. You're not working much. What am I missing? Why why do you want to sell? Like, you could make this what we're going to give you in cash in 2 years. So what's the real reason? They'll be like, oh, I never thought about it. So I want you all to have the opportunity to sell if you want. And if you do have the opportunity, right, that means your business is running without you, which is a good thing. You all want free, you created this business to get more freedom with your family, your friends, be able to afford the things that you want to afford, be able to do impact, right? So create it for that. Like, there's nothing wrong about that. Um, and so what we look for too is like, is the business scalable? So I'm going to look at your way of getting business. If all of your business is coming through referrals, I'll be like, all right, well, is it coming through strategic relationships? If it is, I'll be like, cool. How do I amplify that? How do I get more strategic partners? Or if you have one salesperson, I'm going to look at, well, what if I hired 5 salespersons or salespeople? Would that amplify? Or all your business is coming inbound and it's through content creation. Well, can I create a better offer? Can I create more content? Right? That's how you need to be looking like. So you all know the skeletons in your closet and what needs to be changed. So if a good question to ask yourself is, if you were going to buy your agency today, what would you change tomorrow? That's what you should be doing.
That's a great question. That is really, really good question right there. Looking at it from a different perspective, I think gets us out of those blind spots and ruts and things. So, excellent question.
Yep.
Okay, let's see. Um, how to deal with clients who are after your life to do the work quickly. You can't lose them and you can't do what they're asking for. How do you deal with these kind of clients? So, yeah, do you kind of understand I think the
Oh,
question
so
there?
if let me repeat it back and they could say yes. So you have a client, you have a prospect that wants something done, and you know, you can't do it in the right time. How do you respond?
Yes. Sounds like it.
Okay. All right, cool. So I would just say that's unrealistic. And anybody that says they're going to do it within that time frame is um, probably not going to be done. Like, for example, when I was building my house in Colorado, I got many bids and I had a particular budget. And almost all the builders said, yeah, we can do it for that budget and within the time. I had one builder get back and says, you need to double your budget and it's going to take twice as long. And I was like, tell me more. That's who I went with. The other people, I could have went with them, but it would have charged even more and took us the same amount of time that the other builder that was realistic with me. And so you have to be willing to walk away. So like we would get opportunities to do RFPs all the time. And RFPs really stand for request for punishment, real fucking problem, and so many different ones. And there's only two winners to every RFP, the one that wins it and the first one out. And so I would always go, thanks for sending the RFP. I'd like to chat with someone face to face first. And what I would do is I would ask them questions and I'm trying to position my foot in the door. Now, if they don't allow me to do that, I'd say, hey, our process is a little bit different. We're not just going to do blind RFP and spend a ton of time. We're going to decline your RFP. If anything changes or you want to chat about it, let me know. They would always call me back because they're like, everyone else is saying yes, but these guys are saying no. I'm standing out. They're like, it's like that, um, you know, the hot person turning you down. Oh, you want them even more. That makes sense.
Yeah. Especially if you're being honest too, like your builder is being honest and showed his expertise here.
Well, you educate them, right? They're ignorant on what we do. So they're going to ask for anything. I'll be like, can you create me a waterfall? Of course I can create you a waterfall, but I need some water. And it will cost this. Oh, that's not included in the house? No. Okay, cool. All right. Create the waterfall.
Yep. Corey asks, I own my business and selling and building websites for businesses and making an okay living by doing it, but not marketing services specifically like SEO. What are the top services do you recommend selling for a business like mine? Do you recommend not selling websites like one off and only going with monthly marketing services?
I really can't answer that because it's different for everyone. Um, right? Like it goes back to the original question we started off with. If you're going to be paid on performance, what would you do and who would you do it for? And think about it for a solution, not just a service, right? Like just designing a website's a service and you're going to be an order taker. But why do they want a website? Do they want leads? Do they want more brand recognition? Do they want to sell more? What is it? And you have to think about it that way to be more strategic. But it's great. You created a very nice business that supports your lifestyle. And that might be the right answer too for you, right? Like it's not all about like, I think we're all fed up with all the bullshit ads out there of like, I created a 8-figure agency in 2 months and I'm 22 years old driving around touring the world, right? Like that shit doesn't happen, right? Like this is hard work and you got to put in your paces and that kind of stuff. And you got to do what's right for you. There's many mastermind members that get to 2 million mark and go, I'm good here. Like this is my fighting weight. Great. Or they get to 800,000. This is my fighting weight. Cool. Stay there. There's nothing wrong with like, I a lot of times at the end of the year, I ask a lot of our members, I'm like, what's the number you would want to sell your agency for? People are like, $100 million. Why 100 million? I don't know. It sounds cool. Like, do you think if you sold for 10 million, you still do the stuff you would do for 100 million? Yeah. Okay. Well, like really figure that out.
Remy asks, I'm a freelancer right now. Are there any specific differences one should keep in mind from the advice you shared with us today between agencies and freelancing that one should keep in mind when it comes to selling? And Remy, I think you're talking about selling your services. For context, I recently got let go from a job as a senior software developer and decided to go into freelance web design, software development for SMBs.
Is he talking about selling to individuals or selling his business?
That's a good question. I think it's selling services, not the business. But Remy, if you wouldn't mind, services. Yeah.
There's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. Like someone has a problem and a need and you're just solving it. So the process is the same way. And if you do it kind of the framework I just showed you, you're going to separate yourself from all the other freelancers or agencies. Like you're competing with agencies too.
100%.
Just remember too, if most agencies start out freelancing and then they're like, I don't want to do all this stuff. Like I just like doing the work. I need someone to sell it. Or maybe they go, I like selling it, but I don't want to do the work. And then you hire and then you create an agency. An agency is not a bad word either, right? Like there's some agencies that do amazing work. There's some agencies that do really crappy work. You just got to separate yourself from it.
All right. So we got a couple more minutes here left. If you have a question for Jason, please post those in the Q&A. He's here. He gave ample time to ask him anything, and now's your time. So post your question in the Q&A. We'll get to it. While people are posting their questions, Jason, I want to ask you your outlook in 2025 in agencies, trends, anything you're seeing, what's next for the next year, coming year.
Um, I the one thing I never look for trends. I think that's the wrong thing to be looking for. I like to look for things that are more stagnant that's not going to change. Right? Like think about the question you should all be asking is like, what are the things that's not going to change the next 5 to 10 years? Clients are going to want more business. They're going to want leads, right? They want to grow their business. They want to be, taken out where they don't have to do everything. Like think about that and how you can actually support that. Because if you're just chasing trends and quick little hacks, yeah, some will hit, some will work, but not for the long term. I try to think of things in more long term thing, right? Like I'm looking a couple years out versus a month out, right? Like, you know, we were talking, before we hit the record, this might be the first year we just kind of we're at the same place last year or maybe a little under. Perfectly fine with that, right? Most people are like, oh, but I'm like, in the long term, this is going to take out a lot of the shitty people. In the long term, we'll be exponentially even bigger and reaching more people. So, think of it more long term.
Yep. I liked an emphasis too on what's not going to change. Clients, businesses, clients always want more work. I like that. Sue said, "Were you happy with how your home came out once it was finished?" Smiley face.
Yes. I love it. It's my dream home.
Good. So someone asked, how do you get over the trust factor in scaling, the scaling phase, and hiring out? And I think the question here is framed toward team, delegating, like I'm doing all the work, I'm the owner, and I start to hire and trusting people to do the work.
Yep. Well, it's about hiring the people you don't have to manage. That's really the key. It's about you got to know your lane and to find the right people. Too many people hire the wrong person and then they go, oh, like no one will ever work. It's kind of like I hate Applebee's. I think I talked about this on your podcast. Like I've gotten food poisoning twice from Applebee's.
Okay.
I would never eat at Applebee's, but I still eat out. Right. So I've made bad hires too, but I've hired people. But it's about figuring out who are the right people. And so it really goes back to that first system that when you guys jump into the playbook, you'll see is what's your core value? What do you believe in? and then find those people that do that, that actually can take the service. All the people I hire now, I don't have to manage, right? I hire A people or A players rather than C players or B players. I mean, I have some B, you will have some B players that can turn into A players, but if I have the opportunity to hire an A person over a B person and it only costs me 10% more, I'm going to get 10x the result.
Mm.
And a lot of times too, as we're small and we've made mistakes on hiring, well, one of the mistakes is what you pay them. Pay them what they're worth. Because right now you're you're ranking money above your time.
Mm.
We only have some amount of time in our lifetime. That's your most valuable asset, not the money in the bank account. Pay the person. Like if you can pay someone a little bit more and get more time back, it is so freeing. Like my goal for all of you is to what I was able to like when I was able to really kind of transform into the CEO, like I told you about the roles, I would go into a creative meeting and they'd go, I don't need you. You don't need to be in this one. Then I go into a marketing meeting. We don't need you. Go into a delivery meeting. We don't need you. I'd go home. I'd be pretty depressed, right? Because we want significance. And I'd be like, agency doesn't need me anymore. I'm like, yeah, dumb shit. Like we created it. And then it needs you for the new role. And then I had that significance, right? But then I also had freedom. Like personally, right now, I found my fighting weight with, and when I talk about fighting weight is how much time a week I works for me about 50. I work 15 hours a week, right? That's my fighting weight of going, if I work more, I feel overworked. If I work less, I feel bored. Now, people are going to be very different. It's going to take you a while to figure out what your fighting time weight is and how you be the most efficient. But I wouldn't be able to do that if I wasn't able to get out of sales, if I wasn't able to get out of delivery, right? Marketing, that kind of stuff. So
So Hill says, we do outbound cold calling. What are the best questions we can ask before we get the client on a meeting and the client before we get the client on the meeting? I'll say that part. So
so what is it? Like, what are the best questions to
outbound,
ask?
outbound calling, yeah, questions to ask before to get the client on the meeting. I should ask it this way. For the MBAT and the three eyes, when you're kind of trying to get to the meeting where I think face to face or Zoom to Zoom, you're asking the questions in those frameworks you mentioned. Do you do anything in the preparatory before you get to the call?
Yeah, I send them valuable stuff. I could send them a video like I told you guys. Hey, have you tried this? You could do a strategic gift. We were just chatting about this in the mastermind. One of the salespeople, they do research and they found out one of the prospects that they want to go after is a Marine. And so they sent him a mug with a Marine logo on it and a personalized note. Do you think that's going to warm them up? Hell yeah, it is. Right. Or if someone, and don't send them something with your stupid logo on it. No one wants your logo. Send them something with their logo on it.
It's good. Want to ask, what's your opinion of selling a website project as a project with a set cost versus selling it as an unending small monthly charge to the client?
I always do it with websites. I always did a set cost because it's going to like, but you have to put constraints and criteria around that. I, when we did tons of websites on obviously. So like for a general public facing website, our cost, was I think around 13.5 or something. I might be a couple thousand off. And that's for like a 20-page public facing website. That was our cost, break even. We would charge over 100K for our websites. Um, and at the minimum. And so I would always go, and that's why the budget question is so important. A lot of times I would chat with the prospect and their budget was so much higher, I had to elevate to that or I'd lose the deal. Like I remember pitching a company I've never heard of, went into the conference room and huge conference room, pitched like a $10,000 website. I was small at the time and they laughed at me. And they go, I come back to the office and my business partner at the time was like, what happened? I was like, man, I said 10,000. They kind of chuckled. And they wound up telling me later on, this is Berkshire Hathaway, one of the biggest, largest companies in the world. They're expecting like 300,000. So I lost the deal.
Yeah.
So I'd always charge a fixed cost, but you have to get a general rule. Like you have to have a criteria. Our criteria was number of pages design. Because if someone had 500 pages, it's a lot more work versus 20 pages, or they had some kind of heavy development. Well, I need to know that. The development projects for us were more open ended, just because there's so many gotchas. But for like a general design of a website, public facing website, like it was always locked in, and that was our most profitable.
All right, everybody, we got a couple more minutes. If you have a question, got maybe squeeze one more in. But Jason, what are you excited about next with what you're doing? Thank you so much again for being here. But I want to talk about what you're doing, what you have coming up. I know you have an event coming up in a couple months.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a live event in Phoenix, Arizona. I'd love all of you to, extend an invitation to. It's just 40 agency owners. Our events are all exclusive. So all you have to do is get yourself there. If you go to Elevate My Agency, elevatemyagency.com, or if you go on our website, you can find it under events. So elevatemyagency.com. But it's just 40 agency owners in Phoenix at the end of February. We have some amazing speakers lined up to go over strategies, and I'll be speaking a lot too. Just for scaling your business and getting it to the place where you have more time, you have more freedom. You're working with better people, right? Rather than having to take on that wrong client, which makes things a nightmare. We've all had the crappy client that complains. But if you want to be around amazing agency owners where they're sharing what's working for them, and you're able to make a connections, like our promise is always, we want you to connect, we want you to gain clarity and have confidence to go execute and know that you have the community behind you. So love for all of you to check out and see us in February.
Absolutely, in Phoenix. And then what is another of your programs that you do that you offer agency owners? What is the
Yeah, I mean,
initial?
our biggest thing is building the most amazing community. um there's something to be had about working with a coach, and that's all good, but that's really more short term. And that coach will only be able to provide you so much. And you only know, kind of know a little bit of things to ask. Like, for example, the other day in our mastermind, I was leading it, and I told everybody, I said, I want you to go back to your team and I want you to ask them, what did they want you to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing? Right? It's very powerful. One of the members said, we should do that for our clients too. Right? That would never happen if it was just one on one. Or, like someone saying, their story about like, hey, I just raised my pricing and this is what happened, like Dean did. The other members be like, damn, that worked for him. We're in the same type of business. We should do that. Right. That's just, there's so much more that you get out of a community. And honestly, too, like I look back at when I ran my first agency, I would have never let myself in because I wanted to seek and destroy. I wasn't about, like, hey, if you have all these trusted advisors around you, even though they may be doing something similar, you can grow so much faster. So that's what I'm real excited about.
Absolutely. Jason, it's top of the hour. You've been so generous with your expertise and experience, and thank you so much. I took, let's see, 4 pages of notes. I hope everybody else did, but the replay will be available. But just want to say again, thank you so much. Go to jasonswank.com, check out what he's doing. Make sure you hit the playbook, download that, those first 3 processes. Check out his event, Elevate my agency .com in February in Phoenix. You won't want to miss out on those. If you're ready to take your agency to the next level, and this is just a precursor to all that, but you get a ton of process information to start taking back and seeing what we can start implementing in our agencies.
Perfect. Well, thanks for having me.
You bet. Thanks everybody for being here. And again, go sign up for Jason's playbook and follow him on social media and check him out. But thanks again, everybody, and we'll see you next time.